Hi, everyone. This is another episode of Off the Post. I'm Courtney. There's Jen. Say hi, Jen. So it's Friday. Something's happened. We may have one more joining us, but we might not. So it's going to be us having a chat about the NWSL final then. If you'd like to also talk with us, since, you know, we're kind of light on folk today, you can always use the hashtag WOSOTalk, and I'll be checking the Twitter as we go. So toss in a comment, question, anything. Let us know your thoughts on the final. Other than that, it's probably going to be a pretty brief show today. We're just going to go through the final and get some thoughts. And if anyone has any questions, we'll get to them. And, you know, we're going to be doing a show next week, kind of just to wrap up the NWSL season as a whole. So we won't get too much into it today, but we might touch on it a little bit also. But first of all, just start off, Jen, what were your expectations? Words are hard. It's Friday. What were your expectations coming in to the game last night?
I expected Seattle to put a lot of pressure on Kansas City offensively, and I expected Kansas City to do a whole lot of defensive work. So my expectations kind of played out. I expected maybe to see a little bit more out of Seattle's forwards. Kansas City did really well to kind of keep them quiet, but I expected maybe a little bit more pressuring from Kim Little. I mean, she had some opportunities that I felt she didn't really convert to the best of her ability. So I did expect maybe a little bit more out of her. But other than that, I mean, I expected Barney to have a big game, which she did. So, yeah, I did expect Seattle to win it, though, and they did not. So I don't know if that's good or bad. My team wasn't in it, so I don't really have too much of an opinion anyway. But, hey.
That works. I know, it's kind of funny. We had a split last time, essentially, on who people thought were going to win, and now we have a representative from each here today, so that kind of works out.
It wasn't really split. You and DJ kind of ganged up on me, but that's okay.
Oh, my bad. I forgot how many people are on the show. Life is hard, so it was kind of a split. You were that guy, but that's okay. Somebody had to be. It would have been boring if we all chose Seattle, if we all chose Kansas City. So, it's all good. Yeah, you pretty much covered a lot of what I was thinking about. Like, I think we actually, I'm going to give us a little pat on the back, because I think that all of our comments leading up to in the preview were pretty accurate of things that we thought were going to happen, things that we thought each team kind of needed to focus on, or could be like a weakness for some teams. So, yeah, I expected that it was going to be a close game. I thought maybe we would have some more goals. I didn't think I expected a shutout. Although I guess I could have, because it's Nicole Barnhart, who's had a crap load of shutouts this season. So I guess that really shouldn't surprise me in that aspect. But, yeah, I thought it was going to be a good game, and it was. I thought that Kansas City was going to win, and they did. I thought Lauren Holiday was going to have a good game, and she pretty much did. And Amy Rodriguez, you know, once again, she scored a couple goals in the final last year, and she got the game winner and the only goal of the game this year. So, but I will say I did expect there to be some, you know, wasted opportunities also, and that, again, did also happen. But you only need one, so, you know, got it when it counts. So, yeah, it was a great game, though. I think it was a really entertaining final. I think people were really I know everyone who was watching was like, wow, that was awesome. And it really was. So for people who were maybe just tuning in because it was the final, or like haven't really watched NWSL, and even if those who have, I think they saw a really exciting game. And when you have a final, it's always good to have a super exciting match, because if not, that's super awkward. And it's weird. But let's just start off with the first half. How do you think Seattle played in the first half?
I thought they played well. Like I said, you know, they put a lot of pressure on, which was kind of expected. That's kind of what they've done all season, so I definitely anticipated that from them. Yeah, I mean, they did play well, but they couldn't convert anything. I think there was one moment where Pino went up the flank. I think it was left flank, and got Kim Little in the middle. And Little took a shot, and it was probably one of my favorite moments from Kim Little of the game. Unfortunately, it happened to go right at Barney. But for me, that was one of their big chances. And I think I came in the first half. But other than that, I mean, Seattle was pretty quiet for me, which was kind of disappointing. But I mean, they held, was scoreless at the halftime, which is the first time that's happened in the 3 years of finals. So they played well.
Yeah, I think I would agree with a lot of that. I think they had some time. I think, I'll talk about Kansas City in a minute, but I think that Seattle spent a lot of time chasing the ball. I think Kansas City had good possession early in the game. I think, it shifted at some point. I know there was probably a good 15 minutes that Seattle, it really looked like they were finding their groove and that they were kind of getting things together. And I think probably in that time frame, all those things happened where, Rapinoe made that run and, other things happened. But other than that, I don't know. I feel like it was definitely more Kansas City's half. I feel like there were just a lot of things that they were really – I just felt like Kansas City, like that Seattle was chasing a lot. And I think that, we talked about in the preview, the game plan of kind of neutralizing Kim Little. And she wasn't neutralized. Like, she definitely had some good she definitely got the ball a lot and made some good moves. But as far as, like, actively getting, really solid shots off or, like, really making an impact, I don't think she necessarily did as much as, people thought. But I think that, again, as we talked about, when people are on Kim Little, you expect, Rapinoe and Fishlock and, other players to be more involved. And it's definitely something that we saw. So it kind of just shows the adaptability of Seattle. Okay, you're going to shut down our best player. We have, 2 or 3 or 4 others who can go on through and make it happen. I think maybe it was you that mentioned Merritt Mathias last game. And I think, we saw her last show, still Friday, words are still hard. Mentioned Merritt Mathias and kind of wanting her to step up, and if she started, and she did, she actually started, kind of alone up top. They had Bev kind of, back for a little bit further back, but I think, she wasn't able to make anything happen, but I think that she had some good opportunities that maybe were not finished correctly, but I think that she did have maybe more of an impact than we saw previously. She had more time on the ball, I think, than we saw previously. So that was really interesting from Seattle. But I don't know. It was a good, like, the whole game was good, but I don't think that they were really overly dominant. And then when they were, again, like, obviously they didn't finish their chances / you have Nicole Barnhart that, easily if that ball from Rapinoe would have got past Barnhart, I think that it would have been, like, incredible, and we would have seen an early goal there for sure. But, just execution didn't quite make it. But overall, a solid half. It was scoreless for the majority of the game. So rock on. Same question for Kansas City. What were your thoughts on Kansas City? Were there any players who stood out from both teams in the first half for you?
I mean, all of the back line for Kansas City, I think, played really well. They kept Seattle quiet, which was nice. And Amy LaPelbit, she's just a badass.
Mm-hmm.
I love Amy LaPelbit, and the fact that she was, like, hanging out in the box and almost got a goal made me so happy. So yeah, definitely Kansas City's back line. Nicole Barnhart, of course. I think the big talking point between the two teams in the first half was unfortunately probably that no call that came from Buzz and Fishlock. That we were all like, oh, hey, what happened there? And then they replayed it, and it was like, oh, hey, that was cleats up.
Mm-hmm.
They can be argued one way or the other. I'm not going to say if I think it should have been a yellow or not, but I can see the point from both sides. So I think that was actually a major point of the first half because, like all of us on the panel were talking about it last night, and the refs just kind of seemed to let the game play on. They weren't really calling maybe anything that should have been called, which is great on one hand because it's like, oh, good, they can just play and do their thing. But on the other hand, that's where it starts getting dangerous for players. And we saw a couple of players that could have been seriously injured. And that always kind of bothers me as medical personnel because we never like to deal with that broken bones and bloody things. And that's just not fun. But yeah, maybe someone who stood out for me from Seattle, I think Pino probably stood out the most. She was having a really great game. She was ready to get it done. And unfortunately for Seattle, I guess they didn't. But Pino, I think, had a really great first half.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that. I think in my initial, view of Kansas City was just like, wow, they're really good at moving the ball around, and they've had really good possession. And like I said, Seattle seemed to be kind of chasing, but they were doing really well with just keeping possession. And even if there wasn't really any offensive threat, like in the first couple minutes of the game, they just were doing really well moving the ball around and just, again, keeping that possession and just waiting and being patient. And I know sometimes like teams are like, oh, like, I just want to get towards the goal and make something happen and flip a shot, but like they didn't necessarily feel rushed to do that. They made sure they took their time. So I think that was something that was really good to see was, and then even throughout the first half, I feel like they did have several chances that they didn't convert on, which is, as we know, kind of typical of some members of FC Kansas City, but it wasn't like crazy like it's been in the past. It wasn't, excessive misses. It was and wasteful shots. It was, well, they got close. At least they made Solo make a couple saves, so they at least were on target, which I think is an improvement from the past where, they maybe have had more errant shots. I would agree though, like when LaPalbit got in the box and almost got that goal, I was just like, whoa, that's awesome. And I know we have a lot of LaPalbit fans, out in the viewership and on the panel also. So that would have just been awesome. But I think, like you said, the back lines were just outstanding. I gotta give a shout out to the goalkeepers too. I think they both made some pretty good saves in the first half. I know Barnhart had to come out a little bit and make some good saves. And I know Solo had a couple of diving saves that she really, were great and really prevented Kansas City, both teams, from doing any damage in the first half. But I agree. I'll say that probably that play we were talking about probably should have been a yellow card. I think it's interesting. I read someone posted an article from one of the referees, just saying that she hoped that people do your job but don't get noticed. So I don't know if that mindset is something that she had in the game of not being noticed by making too many calls. But maybe I think in that sense there was too much that was let go, which again, like you mentioned, is dangerous for players. So I think it was good they were letting them play, but I think at some point you have to start calling things in order to protect the player. So, but overall, I'll say I'm going to steal your people. I don't know, Megan Rapinoe definitely for Seattle in the first half, just because, again, when you kind of have people all over a little, someone else has to step up, and I think she had a lot of good ball movement and runs down the side. So, she'll be my player of the first half, and then second half. And then for Kansas City, well, I'll go with Barnhart. Barnhart and LaPalbit. LaPalbit almost, made that happen, and Barnhart was just really solid as always. So those will be my players for the first half. Why not?
Yeah. I feel like I got to give a shout out to Becca Moros too, though, up there covering.
Yes. Yes.
That was huge for her, and I think she was, again, one of the players we said would have to step up, and she did massively. Mm-hmm. So shout out to Becca Moros there.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. I'm like my brain is still swimming because I'm just kind of that's such a good game and so much happened, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, absolutely, Becca Moros, again, was one of those players who we acknowledge has been good all season, but maybe hadn't really had a huge game, but definitely had a big game yesterday, especially. She didn't really, as much as I love Bev, she didn't really have a whole lot going on, and I think a lot of that is because Moros was just amazing. Mm-hmm. But second half, same kind of questions. Anyone that stood out to you? How do you think the teams played? Anything else you just want to talk about in the second half? Go for it.
Second half for me, I think I had more standout players from Kansas City, I think. Of course, the national teamers for Kansas City stepped up there. What was it? 3 of the 4 of them had a hand in that goal. So, mm-hmm. I mean, that was huge, of course. I thought Erica Timrak played really, really well. She was consistently beating her defender every single time, no matter who the defender was on that side, because Seattle ended up making a substitution. Timrak was still able to get in behind and beat the defender in the box. So I thought she had a really fantastic game, and probably, I mean, Jill Ellis was there. I think she made a pretty good cause for herself there. But for Seattle, trying to think, there was one moment where Little and Yanez kind of connected something and sent it over to Rapinoe, and had that been just a little bit off, that goal would have gone in. So the three of them definitely had a better second half, in my opinion, I think. Hope Solo, again, even though she let the one goal in, I thought she played a good half. She kept it at 1-0, considering Timrat kept getting in behind the defender. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers everybody back there for me. I thought Leanne Brown had a pretty good half. Yeah, I think that's kind of everybody. Jess Fishlock, shout out to her, because I know she took an injury. She took 2 injuries, actually, I think, and continued to play. So good for her. And then that moment with Cheney, of course, when all of us like broke down and cried. And
Oh gosh, yeah.
okay. So, yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on that. I thought that the game-winning goal, the only goal, was executed really well. It went from Holiday over to Heyo and then to the head of A-Rod, and A-Rod managed to just hit it right on. So I thought it was a really well-executed goal. It came at the right time.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would mention probably, I'm going to give a shout out to the Post as a player of the game for Kansas City. Not really, but like, I mean, Rapinoe, I think it was Rapinoe, dinged it right off. Rapinoe or Fishlock, I don't really remember which one it was, because sometimes they look alike, and I had a lot going on yesterday. While this game was happening, I was also working, but like dinged it right off the post, and it was like, okay, wow. And it was like a wide open post. So like if it had just gone curled a little bit or like something, like it would have been in. So give the Post the MVP, you know, like not really, but like I'd credit to the Post. But I think that was definitely one of, and she took that shot from like a ways out too. So just the fact that it almost made it in there where it was supposed to go was just incredible. But yeah, I agree. Timrak was in the national team briefly, and I know that was a while ago, and a lot of people think that her time is kind of come and gone. However, and I know people kind of have thoughts that she'd had a very quiet season for Kansas City, but the last 2 games, semifinal and in the final last night, she was incredible. Again, you're right, no matter who the defender was. I know specifically when Fletcher, and I love Fletcher, but when Fletcher was over there, she just kept blowing by her. Like, you know, Fletcher fouled her twice. Well, really fouled her twice, and I don't know that either one of them were called. One, arguably, people say arguably, there was some discussion I saw about whether that was a penalty or not, but like my opinion is it absolutely should have been a penalty, because she just pretty much walked right in front of her, and just kind of like elbowed in her. She was clearly beat. She tripped her up, you know, things like that. But yeah, Timrak just was killing it on that side. She just is so quick, and she was just, you know, tearing it up down the flank. So that was amazing from her. Yeah, again, I'll say both. I agree with both goalkeepers. I think that, again, they both had to make saves that kept their team in the game. And so that's good too. And then, you know, Amy Rodriguez, for as much crap as I've given Amy Rodriguez this season for not finishing, and I'll admit I have, every time we talk about Kansas City, I'm pretty much like, what needs to happen? Amy Rodriguez needs to finish her shots. Like, so fitting that she was one to get that goal. And also Jill Ellis, I'm so glad you were there. Heyo, look at what happens when you use the flanks and use someone like Heyo, who can also like tear down the flank, and just that her cross was like outstanding. Out of, again, people say like out of the sea of Seattle, there were 3 people around her, and like, yes, Rodriguez was not the best marked. She had more space than she should have, but like, Heyo put that ball like right where she was. Like, she was the only one really in the box. She was surrounded by Seattle players, and Heyo put that ball right where it needed to be. So I'm kind of glad Jill Ellis was there, like, and I'm kind of glad that she watched Heyo do good things all game, but really that cross was like outstanding. So please, I'm glad. Hopefully you noted that, Jill Ellis, because I would love to have you continue to have Heyo on the team and use her. But yeah, that header was like just perfect, and again, like I said, just so fitting that the three of them were involved in that goal, and I thought again, like Holiday had a really good game, and I think I mentioned that a lot of, even if she's not necessarily doing a lot of things like towards the goal, a lot of the play goes through her, and it did last night, and I think that she was an excellent playmaker and kind of did such a great job of setting things up. So that was outstanding for her, and yeah, I was reading that, like, we were talking about that. I think it maybe was Fishlock with that cleats up challenge in the first half, and I heard that someone said that she did actually like get cleated and was kind of shook it off and came back and still wanted to play. And I think that's takes a lot of guts. I know it's a final, so that might be an extra contributing factor. But good for her. Like, I think it just really shows how much you want to be in the game, and it means a lot to you. So I'm glad that she was able to shake it off, and I'm glad Holiday was able to come back. God, that was scary. That was just scary. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just scary when that happens, and like people seem super concerned. And I'm glad she was able to shake it off and come back. Hi, Emily.
Hey, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm here.
No worries.
Kind of sick.
No, you're good. We just kind of talked about the game. We just talked about first half, second half in kind of a nutshell. So we'll just kick it over to you. And just if you want to just tell us about your thoughts on the game in general, both halves, like overall, if there's any players who stood out to you, and just kind of what your thoughts were.
Well, as a Reign fan, I'm obviously disappointed, kind of sad. Kansas City played one hell of a game. The Reign did too in the beginning. The pressure was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I was really disappointed by the score, I'm not going to lie. 1-0. I think we had plenty of opportunities to tie that, but we didn't, so I'm sad in general. It's a very sad day. Those are my thoughts. Not much, but...
Yeah, were there any players on either team that stood out for you specifically that you were just like, wow, that was a really great performance from them?
Kendall Fletcher, like, she was being ridiculously amazing yesterday. That's like my buddy right there. She did so great. You also had Amy Rodriguez, like that header was just amazing. I'm not gonna lie, that header was incredible. Yeah, probably, and Nicole Barnhart. Those crucial saves she made. You know what? It was a great game. I'm not gonna lie, great game.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know, like, we've talked about Kansas City sometimes is boring when they play, and I definitely think they were not boring this game, which, thank you, Kansas City. Like, it just took the final, but you were not boring to watch, and I'm just excited that you were not boring. Please continue to not be boring in the future, because you were just great. I just went and had a little mini look forward. What do you we'll start with Emily first. What do you think that, looking forward to next year for Seattle, like, do you think there's any changes that the team can make to improve? Do you think that, depending on what happens in the offseason, they'd have a chance to make it back to the final again next year?
As a Reign believer, I always believe we're going to go to the finals, but I would have liked to see Mariah Nogueira in there, kind of like playing a bit more time, because she's such a great player, and I'm kind of sad Laura doesn't use her as much. But I think her and Vay can make like a pretty good combo up there. Her and Matthias, they can dominate, up there and score goals and get things done.
Do you see them potentially making? I know it's hard to predict this, but do you think that there's any potential like roster changes that they're going to make for next year? Was there any roster changes you'd like to see them make? Any players you would like to see come play for the Reign that might actually be a possibility?
I don't know why, but I have a strange feeling that Rachel Corsi might, leave, but I really don't want her to. But I don't know, I have a feeling she might. I would, Stephanie Cox, I think she said she was retiring, and that's like a huge loss for us. But you got defenders like Michelle Cruz, young and ready to go out there and, kill it. So I would love to see Michelle Cruz out there. And as for transfers, I really don't want to change the lineup or like any of our subs or anything, because honestly, we're pretty potentially good enough to go to another NWSL final.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent that like wasn't used. You have Amber Brooks, like you said, Mariah Nogueira, I forget what her name is now that she's married, so sorry, Mariah Nogueira, but yep, thank you. So I think like that'll be interesting. I know it'll be interesting to see what Stephanie Cox does. I know she had written somewhere that she was considering retiring. I don't know if that's like a definite thing that she's doing or not, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with her, because I think she had we didn't mention her at all in our little like recap, but I think she had a really good game. She had a good game, and she's had a really outstanding season for Seattle. So I hope that she would consider coming back at least for one more season. But I guess we'll have to find out what happens. Jen, what do you think about Kansas City? Obviously there'll be Lauren Holiday less next year. What changes do you think that they could make to improve? Do you expect them to make any change? And it's hard to see, like, we don't know if they're going to make any changes, but like, are there any changes that you would like to see them make, I guess would be the better question.
I don't know if there's necessarily any changes I would like to see them make. I expect a big shakeup all over the league, though, with possible expansion. That's going to mean different allocations. It's going to mean, with the Olympics next year, obviously we're going to be missing national team players again. We're going to have other players stepping up to fill those roles. So again, kind of like there was this year, I expect another big shakeup, particularly in the expansion case with new allocations, because they do have to allocate players to the team in Orlando, and I can think of a couple off the top of my head that might want to go there. So it's definitely going to cause some shifting as far as that's concerned. I mean, they're solid. Their back line is ridiculous. I think maybe their midfield, you might see maybe Shea Groom step in a little bit more with Holiday gone. I know she had some injury for most of this season, but she played absolutely brilliantly when she wasn't injured. So I expect probably to see a little bit more of her. I can't really say there's a whole lot of improvements I would like to see them make. They're coming off of a championship, so that's like saying, how can our Women's World Cup team improve after they just won the World Cup?
True.
But, I mean, they're a solid team. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the shifting of players and all that going on. So I'll just kind of have to keep my eyes peeled and take things as they come with this team.
And one thing that we talk about often is the allocations and how once upon a time it used to be fairly distributed pretty much, but that Kansas City has so many now. Depending on expansion, again, they could be different rules for expansion drafting, but if I remember correctly, last year when they did the expansion draft, or not last year, last time they did an expansion draft, I think each team was only allowed to keep, and they're going to lose an allocated player anyways, I guess, because Holiday is not going to be there, but I believe each team was only able to protect at least, I think, 2 of their allocated players. So if that's the case again this year, not to say that an expansion team would necessarily have to draft one of those allocated players, but it does bring, for all teams in the league, the potential of a definite shift in allocated players, because you're not gonna have, you potentially can't protect them all, so you could potentially have allocated players drafted from every team if they wanted to. That could essentially be a thing. Well, maybe not. I don't think they were allowed to. I think they were only allowed to have so many allocated players also in an expansion team. But each team is at risk for losing at least potentially one of their allocated players. So, and like I said, I believe they could have potentially 3 allocated players also. So it's definitely a possibility. So it'll be interesting to see for all these teams kind of what happens in the future there. So really just to kind of wrap this up, just because we're going to keep it short and sweet today, we're going to do, like I said, we're going to do a final NWSL recap show next week on Wednesday, but just want to hear, because we had the final, your final thoughts. Actually, before we do that, we did have one comment that I wanted to just read about. Jen Hayes, lovely panelist Jen Hayes, just commented the difference in the final was that Kansas City had a plan B on offense and Seattle did not. What are you guys' thoughts on that real quick?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think they tried to utilize other options. Kim Little is their plan A. We all know that. We all know get the ball to Kim Little. It's like Carly Lloyd. find one player that you're going to get the ball to and shoot it forward. I think they tried to utilize other options. They had Pino out on the flank trying to make plays. She was trying to get it in between the posts. Bev Yanez stepped up. Merritt Mathias stepped up. They couldn't finish it. So I don't know that it wasn't that they didn't have a plan B. I think they had a plan B. I just don't think their plan B was as well executed.
Okay. Emily, as the Reign fan, what are your thoughts on that comment?
I mean, we all know Laura Harvey is such a great coach. She had a plan B, C, up to Z. I know that for sure, for a fact. She had many plans up her sleeves. They probably weren't executed because of the subs we had to make. Kendall Fletcher was a huge loss in the defense, and, she had to think tactically, I'm going to take out Kendall, so put in Reed, but then I can't put a forward up because I need more help out in the back since we just lost a huge part of our defense. So that might have played a factor in, in our offense. Yeah, that's what I think.
All right, sounds good. So just quickly to wrap up, just a couple words on what your overall thoughts were about the NWSL season. We'll start with Emily.
I'm disappointed in the final, but Reign's season was amazing. Still unbeaten for 2 years. I mean, no other club has done that, so pretty proud of the team. Still proud. That's all I have to say.
Great. Jen, your thoughts on the overall season?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on about the spirit for days, which I probably will on our recap show next Wednesday. So I'm just going to keep it to the league as a whole. Toward the end there, I was really, really pleased. Yesterday our final was in Portland. Portland wasn't playing, so that's an important thing to keep in mind here, because Portland was not playing. It was in Portland Stadium, and there were still over 13,000 seats filled. So that to me is huge. It was huge that we had a Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers game on last night that went into overtime, and we still managed to get over 160,000 viewers for the NWSL final on a channel that not everybody has. So things like that really started popping up at the end of the season. And as a fan of the sport and as a supporter of the league in general, to me that's huge. The strides that we've made this year as a league, as players, as supporters, as staff, whatever, just the strides that we've made are huge. And the fact that Nike just extended a sponsorship deal with the NWSL until 2019 says a lot. They're putting a lot of faith in the league, and I think it's well placed, and I certainly hope it's well placed. So I'm excited to see where we move on from here.
Thanks. And, just my final thoughts, I have mixed thoughts, I guess, in the league as a whole. There definitely has been growth. I think the World Cup, I think they haven't maybe taken advantage of the World Cup bump as much as they could have, but it's nice to see that bump, and it kind of has extended throughout the whole rest of the season. It didn't really, necessarily fade off. Like Ben said, the fact that there were so many viewers on a channel that not everyone gets during football and overtime and a great game and people are trying to watch football and all that stuff. So the last couple games actually were on direct competition with football and still did fairly well. So and that's good news. I think the regular season there was so much more parity in the league, and where I'm conflicted is that because there is so much parity, I'm a little disappointed that it was the same two teams in the final as last year. However, the part of me that likes a good rivalry/rematch was yes, this is awesome. So I guess I just have conflicting thoughts about that. But I think overall it was a really great season. We saw I think we had a really good draft this year, and we saw a lot of those players do really well this year, and I think that's always good to see. And it feel like that makes more players as they come out of college, want to actually enter the draft and enter the league. I think there's still a long way to go, but I think we're just getting better year by year, and I think it was overall a really good season. Anyone else have anything else they want to say before we sign off for the evening?
I'm good, I think.
Stop hating on Jess Fishlock.
Okay.
That's a controversial topic. No, I'm not going to go into that.
Okay. Stop hating on Jess. Leave Jess Fishlock alone. Anyways, thanks for.
I was good with Jess Fishlock last night. I had a problem with Hope Solo getting all cranky back there with Heyo.
Oh, with Heyo, right? That was something.
Getting all crabby back between the posts.
Mhm.
Well, there you have
it. That's all I have to say.
There you have it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Try to keep this one shorter. You know, it was somewhat successful, but you know, a lot to talk about. It was a great final. Thanks for watching. Check in Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're gonna have an awesome NWSL wrap up. We're gonna have some great people on the show. Maybe some interesting people will pop up. We'll see. But so check us out then for our NWSL wrap up. We'll let you know what we plan on doing in the off season as well. And thanks for checking in. Bye, everybody.
Woo.